dynamic Atlanta family. Welcome to another episode of Coffee Talk. I'm Charles Neal, your host, and we are honored to have Kim Keever. She is the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer over at Cox Communications. Welcome, Kim.
Hey, Charles. Thank you for having me. It's so good to be here today.
Oh, no, you're a long time coming, Kim, and we're honored to have you. It's Women's History Month, and when we get to spotlight different leaders, we try to cater to them, during the Heritage Months, etc. But I will say, Kim, when I look at you, I don't necessarily look at you just as a woman leader. I look at you as a leader, period, because I've been in a room with you many times where it's been you and your peers over time, and you know there's always been a swag about you. That a relaxed calm, a relaxed energy, but it was a strength in there. I remember you getting on stage one time and somebody said something, and you said, "Oh, I don't worry about that. I'm good. My team is good, so that doesn't keep me up at night." But it was impromptu, and so that's the energy that I know you have, and that's what when talking to our audience, I want them to get a sense of. And so I'm going to ask you this question: where did that come from? How did your leader style become intense, but in a wrapper of relaxation that says, "We got this. We own it."
Yeah. Well, I guess there's a lot to that. I was always interested in math, science, and technology as a child. And it's unusual, when I was coming up because they didn't typically encourage that for women. I ended up going to Georgia Tech because of that interest, and it was incredibly difficult in terms of the education, but great because it teaches you to be pretty resilient. And I found out pretty quickly there that there was some value to being a woman in this space because there were not as many. I mean, it was 5-to-1 male to female when I was there. But instead of feeling bad about that, I looked at it as an opportunity, right? I looked at it as, okay, I'm different and I'm needed because there's not that many of me. And plus I liked what I was learning and I liked being around the people. But it also taught me some lessons about there are incredibly intelligent people there. And you are never going to be the smartest person around. So you have to become comfortable with, huh, um, I'm going to work with other people and I'm going to rely on them for their strengths and find a way to work with them and partner with them and leverage their strengths so that they can leverage mine. So I think from my perspective as a leader, that really helped develop me because we all know that now one of the key great hallmarks of leadership is to be able to do that, to build a team that has a bunch of different strengths, each person having a different set of strengths. Not everybody can be the same, and leveraging those strengths for the good of the team. And so I think I was just fortunate to have a really difficult experience early on because you do feel like a failure constantly. You have to become comfortable with that when you're in a school like that. And then just learning how to really leverage different types of people.
Love that. I love that last part where if it doesn't, when you start looking at the experiences, they're going to be tough, but don't let them break you. You can bend but not break, right? And that's what I get from that. When we look at, let's say your mid-career journey leading up to where you are now, what was some of the roles, or at least one of the roles that helped fortify the fact that you said, I do have this. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing, even in the face of detractors.
Yeah. Well, listen, I don't know how I did this, but probably mid-career, I chose to go into consulting after I graduated from school. And when you're in consulting, you're thrown into a lot of situations. And I was fortunate enough to have, I lived all over the place, but then I ended up coming back to Atlanta and having a client here. And while I was at the client, we were working on some things, and the president of one of their divisions, that was a new division, approached me and he said, I really liked working with you, Kim. We're going to stand up a new business and we need a leader to run technology. And I'd like you to do it. And I'm thinking, I don't know how to do that, but I I don't know how to do that, but this person is willing to take a risk on me. It was at a point in my life where I really didn't want to have to travel all the time. And I was located in the Northeast, and I thought it might be a great opportunity to get back to Atlanta, where I was from. So I took the role and was just scared to death because I had never done that before. And what it involved was literally building a technology team from scratch to build out a business unit for one of the it's an investment manager that's in Atlanta, and we were building out a business unit to run retirement plans. So people are probably familiar with retirement plans, but all the systems related to that. So again, I use that same core set of values to say, okay, I'm going to have to hire a team that has a diverse set of skills. I need to communicate openly with my boss because I was very open with him. I said, I've never done this before. You're gonna have some grace with me. And he's like, I know you've never done it before. Some of the other people here have never done it before, but we're willing to partner together, and I'm willing to take a bet on you. And he was a really good advocate for me, and it was very interesting because as that team was built, there were some people that came on that were more experienced than others. They were very challenging to deal with because they knew that I didn't have as much experience. I was always the youngest person in the room, the one with the least experience in the room, but I had, my team of experts to rely on, and he was a great champion for me. Whenever people would be naysayers, I would just kind of calmly say, "Okay, tell me a little bit more about that. Let's figure out how we can solve the
Yeah.
challenge." And so I guess the thing was knowing that I needed to rely on a bunch of different people. I had a great advocate for me that was willing to be there, in my boss, and being honest with him, and just kind of being open with my partners to say, I get that I get that we have a lot of demands. We got to work through this together. How can we partner together? And so, willing to fail, willing to. I was also willing to take failure on my team, so I knew they had to grow. So I said, you're going to be given some. Here's our objectives. I'm going to give you some bandwidth to go, but I'm going to accept responsibility for your failures because I know you're growing,
Especially,
and we can learn together. So that ended up being a very successful business. We grew it. We got got a lot of customers, some pretty large name brand customers, and it was really nerve wracking at first, but just took it and ran with it.
I'm with you. I consulted early in my career, most of my career actually, if I think about it. And being thrown in that fire where you're going into a city, you don't know a person, you go into an office, you don't know a person, and you're giving a role where you have to corral individuals, and everybody has their agenda, and for you, whatever yours happens to be, you still have to make it happen. And just getting from that beginning point to the end where you're leaving that specific project, with the respect and accomplishment of getting the job done. That's a
Yeah.
long road. And I know, the ups and downs emotionally as well as learnings that you have to go through for that. But you said a couple of times while you were building your teams out, a diverse set, a diverse set. I know in the past you were on the National Diversity Council over at Cox, right?
Mhm.
Um, for you, is diversity, and I'm not going to try to get us into too much trouble here, but diversity in your brain, peaks and valleys in knowledge, gender, ethnicity. Where does diversity work for you? And why is that the secret sauce for you in how you bring teams together?
Well, it's all those things that you mentioned, because the reality of it is that the more different types of people, and I mean, diverse like you traditionally think of it, but also diverse in personality types. Like you need your super outgoing people who are going to always want to be talking to people, and you need your introverted people who are always going to want to be focused, and you need your traditional diversity in terms of the fact that they have a background and can reach different types of people and provide different perspectives to your team. um, it all goes back to the people. Like that is how you succeed. You've got to deliver, but you do that by having these diverse sets of people that can kind of make you stronger. because they can reach out to multiple different types of individuals. They can engage with and get the buy-in of multiple different types of people. And the more people that you have good relationships with, the more you set yourself up for success. And so that's the way I've always looked at it. And it's interesting. I find myself always having to remind the team of that because when you have diverse sets of people, sometimes they'll get on each other's nerves. And what I usually try to take it back to is say, well, now remember, this is, and I do, sometimes I will point it out to people. I'll say, this is our person who we want to be driving this, who we want to be out in front doing this. Cause I'll have other people like, I want to be, like instance where I want to be left alone. I want to be able to work on my own. I'm like, okay, do that. You can do that because you've got this person who is willing for the team to go out and represent us to others. And so just pointing out to each other what the strengths and capabilities are of each person helps the team to gel better and helps you be more effective. And so that's kind of how I think about it.
But where did you get that innate coaching skill? When I say coaching skill, and it may be bigger than coaching, right? Because you're putting people in positions to succeed. You don't have a lineman playing cornerback. You don't have a cornerback playing quarterback. You don't have a quarterback playing, linebacker. You're putting people in the right position, but you still had to be able to recognize the fact that this is the position they should be in. What was that? How did you develop that critical skill that says, let me align the people with their strengths? Because a lot of people don't get that. They manage it. They don't necessarily lead it to that level.
Well, it's funny when you think about it. From my perspective, I think I got to that point because of my own personal, I guess, insecurities early on. And what I mean by that is, when you're younger and you're growing in your career, you're looking around and you're seeing all these different people with different strengths that you want to emulate. But it's really impossible to have all those strengths yourself. You've got to really stop and figure out and learn what about you is your own personal strength. And when you realize that, and then you got to find the work that you can do that aligns with that strength, or else you're going to be, always in conflict with yourself. Um, and then once you realize what your strength is, you can maybe accept that you don't have strengths in other areas. So you learn that you're going to have to complement yourself with other people. It was that lesson to myself that made me realize that's something I can share with others and maybe make them feel better to learn about how they can succeed. And so that's kind of a message I try to share with people. And that's how I've always built teams because no one has it all. I mean, some people may appear like they have it all, but they don't. We all each have our own talents and strengths. And so it was learning that lesson and then trying to share it with the team. So personal, I guess, personal pain that gets you there so you can develop
Introspection, right?
others.
Yeah. It's like we're going to learn based off of my pain here.
That's right.
So I'm gonna pivot a little, right? Y- you are the shield for Cox. What I mean by that is that every day, I'm pretty sure that there are millions of potential intrusions where people are trying to crawl the network to see where there's a vulnerability to be able to get in and exploit a weakness in the system. And I know, and we'll go into how you've expanded that, but for right now, I know you take it seriously. You have no choice in the matter. But I mean, how do you approach that problem set of saying, I'm going to get up, I'm going to go into work, I'm going to look at my first report, and I'm going to see X number of attempts, knowing that you got to stop 100% of them, I'm assuming, because you just don't know what that one will be that could blow the network up.
Right. Well, it is in the millions, so you're absolutely correct. And basically, again, it's about leveraging all those different relationships and those people. We work in a great industry where we really do share threat intelligence across the industry because it makes us all better. It's an ecosystem that works together. So, for example, if we see something breaking on our network, we contact those sources of information sharing and share it with them so that they can stop it. And then we have a great team here at Cox that supports what we do. So we raise awareness all the time on kind of what our strengths and what our weaknesses are, and get the funding we need and the support we need to remediate things that we might need to fix. Because even though we're doing the best job we can, new things happen all the time. And so we're constantly monitoring our network, evaluating our network, testing our products, fixing the things that come out, working with, partners that help identify things. We have people like security researchers who are trying to do good for the industry, and they'll find things that maybe we haven't found. And so we partner with them. So it's just a constant ecosystem of work. And I'll tell you, back to the industry, I do feel really lucky to work in this industry, very fortunate to work in this industry. Some industries do share, and many do share, but you in this space, I don't ever feel alone. I feel like there's a lot of partners that I can work with, and a lot of different, partner industry sources that we work with. So it is tough, but I feel like that our teams are constantly exposing the information, working with leaders, working with other teams, so that there's if something happens, I feel like we've done the best. Always feel like we've done the best that we can. So just constantly, like you said, constantly shields up and working on it.
You know, if it was only that, that would be enough. But I know over your left shoulder you have a signed document that says, "Hey, I'm part of NSTAC, the National
Mhm.
Security Telecommunications Advisory Council, that looks not just at Cox Communication, but now we're expanding that out to the country." Right?
Right. That's right.
How did that come about? And don't give me the version that, hey, if I tell you, I got to kill you.
No, that's funny.
But
Yeah.
that is incredibly large that you are a team member in an industry, in an advisory group that says, I'm protecting the country.
That's right.
Talk to us a little about that.
So that it is the National Security Telecommunications Advisory Council, and I was fortunate back at the beginning of last year to be appointed by the president. It is a role that goes continues through administration. So it's a group that's been the inception was sometime during in the late 80s, and the intention is that it is the government's way of getting industry. And so this is a lot of very big companies that you have, like AT&T and T and Comcast, but you also have leading security companies like Mandiant and Iridium, some of these companies that develop new technologies for the industry. So it's a group of about 15-ish, 15 to 20 people. And our objective is to represent industry's perspective to the government so that they can partner more effectively with us in a way that makes sense, so that when the recommendations are made, they're not coming as sort of an edict, they're coming as a partnership with industry. And so, for example, we just completed a study that I was one of the chair people of, called the Measuring and Incentivizing Best Practices for Cybersecurity, where we took about 50 different experts from across, the ecosystem to tell us about what they thought were best practices. And then you develop a recommendation, and then it's accepted, and the president translates it into an executive order that can then be broadly used across the ecosystem. Um, they actually requested that I become part of it. The government did. The Department of Homeland Security under CISA requested that I apply to become part of it because Cox partners so well with the industry. They asked at the same time they asked the CISO for Comcast, who's also a female, to become part of it. And
Yeah.
so we both joined at the same time. And it's been very rewarding. Like I said, I jumped right in. But it is really rewarding to be able to know that you have access to the leading experts in the space, and you're striving to do something better for the country. So it's been a really good experience for me, and quite an honor, just very much of an honor.
Oh,
So
listen, I couldn't even imagine all of that. But I mean, it's a testament and a credit to the team building skills that you said you were chairing. people recognize. Now you're saying, "Hey, I'm on this council," and I mean, in fact, though, you're saving lives, when it all boils down to it. I want to get you out of here on this one, right? We talked previously about the hardships of being a woman early in the career of tech, especially when you start talking cyber, etc. And I remember we were talking about the value of mentorship and how to help individuals in their career growth, paying it forward. Not to go too deep in, but I do remember you saying that there were hardships early in your career for you and in the mentoring side, being mentored, and that hit you to your core. And so you've become a big advocate in organizations like Year Up and City of Refuge. We talked about the National Diversity Council earlier. How has that the onset of in the beginning of, I guess, how that mentorship or lack thereof affected you in the passion that you have now towards these organizations?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I would say it's not so much a hardship, but it was like I was coming up at a time when mentorship really wasn't a big thing, right? So um, you would you didn't really have I didn't really have other than like if you had a role model to look up to, I didn't have a person that I could bounce things off of in my career, and it would have been very helpful. And so when I think about mentorship, I think back to that, and I think like it's silly to when I think about if you're humble and you think about being a mentor, you're like, I'm a mentor. That's crazy. So I don't think about it that way. Like I think about it more like I'm here to help, and I'm here for you to bounce anything off of that you want. So I think about mentorship in that way. And then I think, when I think about some of these other things that we've done, I think about people who haven't had as many opportunities as I've had and perhaps some of the other people. And one of the organizations we became involved with several years ago was something called Year Up, where it's an organization with these young people who are very smart. They just don't have the means. Like, they may have gotten a scholarship to college, but they couldn't even go to college because they couldn't pay for like, they got the scholarship, but the scholarship didn't include their housing, for example. So they couldn't live, they couldn't support themselves, so they couldn't take advantage of that. And they get some of these people later on once they've been out in the workforce, and Europe mentors them and works with companies to do an internship and then mentor them, and then they end up with these great careers moving forward. And so things like that where people don't have as much opportunity is where I've liked to sort of focus a little bit, because I feel like that's something where you can really make a difference because they haven't had the same opportunities. So I just try to think about it from that way. Um, Different points in time, I'm involved with different organizations. Within Cox, the same thing, trying to figure out where we can focus on mentoring and helping others. And so I think that's one of the best things about working for Cox for me really is that I've had a fortune to work for some really good companies. But honestly, Cox really uh, lives the values that they articulate. And so focusing on that has is part of your normal work, not and recognized, which is great. Whereas other companies may say it, Cox really means it.
Yeah. I'm gonna get you out of here on this because I know you're an avid jogger, but I'm trying to figure out while you're running those miles, is that where the introspection aspect comes in? Is that where you're starting to say, because it's been a common theme. I've really caught it. This is something new that I've learned about you, is that, you are thinking through the lens of how did it impact me? How did I feel about it? And how can I pay it forward and make it better for other individuals, whether it's one on one or in a team format for a company or on a national footprint, which allowed you to get that document signed by the president behind your shoulder. So, Kim, we appreciate you for coming in and sharing your journey with us. And we know you have many more miles ahead of you, in terms of your own career and the help you're going to be giving to our communities. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.